Bob Barker walking around.
Now it's me, Gary, but
Wow, that doesn't count.
well, isn't it Wayne Brady? Is it Wayne Brady now? You're carried it to Wayne Brady. Oh, is it Wayne? Yeah, he's good. Though. I like him. Yeah, Wayne Brady. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. We will get started. I need to mention there's coffee, cookies, water over there, so go get some.
Yeah, you get.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Sean Paschke with Xcel Energy, the proud premier sponsor of The Pulse. Thank you for being here with us today for part 2 of this special edition of The Pulse, where we're turning our attention to the latest from the Minnesota legislature. Earlier this week, we explored what came out of the North Dakota session, and today we're going to dig into Minnesota's. While the geography shifts, the goal remains the same, bringing you clear, timely insights on the policy decisions that shape our businesses, our communities, and our future. The Pulse is all about cutting through the noise. It's where we elevate the conversations that matter, whether it's workforce, infrastructure, housing, economic growth, or the legislation that connects it all. These gatherings are designed to keep you ahead of the curve, equipped to lead, and ready to take action. In just a few moments, you'll hear directly from Minnesota lawmakers representing our region. They'll help us understand what passed, what stalled, and what it all means for you and the work you do every day. The decisions made during legislative sessions on both sides of the river have a direct impact on your bottom line, your workforce, and the long-term strength of our communities. That's why it's important to create intentional space for dialogue, reflection, and understanding. Of course, this platform wouldn't be possible without the partners who step up to support it. They recognize that staying informed and engaged isn't optional, it's essential. Let's take a moment to thank the sponsors who helped make today's event possible. Thank you to our program sponsor, Sanford Health, and our supporting sponsors, AM 1100 The Flag, Bremer Bank, Building Industry Association of the Red River Valley, Concordia College, Minnesota State Community and Technical College, Moore Engineering, North Dakota State College of Science, and Town and Country Credit Union. Thank you to all these generous companies. Let's give them a round of applause. Now I will hand things over to Cale Dunwoody, Chamber Vice President of Public Policy.
Great. Well, thank you, Sean. Thank you all for joining us here this afternoon. I want to give a special thank you to our legislators for joining us here as well. I know some of you had to travel a little ways to make it down here, but just really appreciate you being here. These conversations are critical to really understand what happened throughout this legislative session. So thank you all for taking an interest in that. That's really meaningful, and these conversations help breed further discussions and help really shape good public policy. So we just appreciate all of that. I'm not going to go into a bunch of comments. I want to get right to the legislators here. So maybe let's just start off by having you all introduce yourselves, giving a little bit of background about the area that you served, the committees that you served on this legislative session, and maybe your top legislative priority going into the legislative session. Senator Johnson, we'll start with you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Cale, and thank you everybody for coming on such a beautiful afternoon here. I'm surprised we have this many folks. It shows your dedication to the cause of coming and just participating in politics, and really appreciate your effort in doing that. It speaks volumes to this community and those who are part of it. So I'm State Senator Mark Johnson. I represent the area just to the north of us here. I've got all are part of 8 counties up there, go all the way to the Canadian border and over to Lake of the Woods. So that's my neck of the woods. I've been serving there since 2016, was elected 2016, 2017 was my first session. So hitting that 10-year mark this session, which is unbelievable for me, but serve on as leader, the minority leader for the Republican caucus in the Senate. I don't have a lot of committee loads other than rules and administration is one of my committees, and a few other scatterings within there. But my big job has been trying to herd the other 32 cats that I oversee within my own caucus, and our staff and those folks as well too. But it's just been an honor to serve those of you who are in my district and to be part of this as well too. And Cale, thanks for putting this all together as well.
Thank you, Representative Gander.
Thank you, Cale. Nice to be here.
I'm from East Grand Forks, Minnesota, brand new to the House of Representatives just this year, just elected. And so I think I was a little more deer in the headlights on day one. It's getting a little bit better now, day by day as we go. Really nice to serve. I have the southern half of Mark's district. So I have from, let's say, East Grand Forks over to about Boston, Langby, and then south, 5 townships in Clay. And that's probably why I'm invited here, including Felton and Hewlett as the furthest southern part of my district that I serve. What really brings me here, you know, I could have stayed home today, but I'm happy to be here. A couple of factors that caused me to really want to be here and listen and learn also. Number one, the border cities legislation that we've been working on, strengthening that, expanding that. We know there are some disparities between the state of Minnesota, state of North Dakota with regard to taxation. We want to equalize that every way that we can in these border cities, give families, businesses reasons to locate on the Minnesota side versus the North Dakota side. And then the other factor that brings me here is your flood protection project that you're working to complete. Up in Grand Forks East, Grand Forks, ours is done. I cannot tell you the peace of mind that comes from a Corps certified flood control system. You're out of the floodplain, you're done paying flood insurance, unless you want to. And so it's really, really nice. The peace of mind, you can't even fathom it until you have it. So I want to push that over the finish line for you all any way that I can, be of service to you in the House for that purpose. I serve on Ag and Human Services, so we can talk more about that later if you'd like. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Senator Kupec.
Thanks, Cal. So I'm Rob Kupec. I cover all of Clay County, except for those townships that Steve just mentioned, and then a good old chunk of Becker County over to the east. I am in my first term, Senate, has a 4-year term, so the first part of that 4-year term. I am on, I can always remember what committees I'm on the Labor Committee. I'm on Health and Human Services. We split it up a little differently on the Senate side than the House does. I'm in the Higher Ed Committee, and then I'm the Vice Chair of the Agriculture Committee. So those are most of the areas where I carry some legislation. This year, we'll talk more about it, but there were still some good wins. There were also some things that didn't happen that we're disappointed about. There were some things that didn't happen that we were excited about that they didn't happen too. So sometimes not happening is also a good thing in that area. I will say, I know one of the priorities, certainly going into the session was the PRTF. That Clay County is trying to put up with the regional psychiatric treatment facility, and happy that we got, some money for that. And that was kind of a team effort here to all in on that. So that was a good thing that we got that. And our county commissioners, as I always say, have done a phenomenal job coming down and lobbying our fellow legislators too on that issue. So.
Representative Joy.
Thanks, Gail. Thanks everybody for coming today. Representative Jim Joy, I cover 4B, which is part of Becker County and all of Clay County, because I even would cover more at North Dakota. Just to be clear on that, but except for the townships. But I serve on Vice Chair of Taxes. I serve on state and local government, and I serve on transportation. And it was an interesting session, and we'll get into the dialogue on that. One of the priorities I had going in was thinking about businesses and mandates that came through the last session before this, and the mandates unfunded coming down to counties and the cities, and what it's going to impact property tax for people living in our areas in Minnesota and all of Minnesota. And then the other part I was worried about is this paid family leave is still trying to get some work done on that, or maybe delaying it or repealing a little bit, because we hired 400 new employees in the state of Minnesota when we're facing a deficit. That was a big concern for me going in. But we didn't get much done on that, but I guess I look forward to the discussion today. Thanks for all coming out.
Great. Well, thank you all for those introductions. And for the folks in the audience, if you have questions for these distinguished guests up here, there's QR codes on the screens, but then there's also little cards on your tables that you can scan. It'll come auto-populate right up in front of me here, and I'll try to interweave those into the conversation. And then I just really want to start off by first kind of acknowledging the events that have recently happened in Minnesota, and just want extend our thoughts and prayers to everybody that was impacted by those events. Obviously, the loss of Speaker Emeritus Hortman was tragic, and then the events that happened with Senator Hoffman, just terrible. And so, just want to take a minute to recognize that and just thank you all for making this event possible by being here. So, just want to extend our appreciation to you all. Maybe now just jumping into the session, and I really want to start off by there's a lot that happened right away. Really complex, really, trying to help navigate this conversation. I wanted to take a minute to kind of peel back the onion a little bit, look at the different layers of complexity here. And I think there was complexity in both the House and the Senate, at the same time, but also had their own unique challenges and opportunities. And so to our two House members, maybe just starting off talking about the beginning of session, there was a lot of uncertainty. There was a tied legislature, numerous court cases, a special election, and ultimately a delayed start. So can you just give us a little bit of context and some insight into what took place back in January in the House? And ultimately, can you just outline the agreement that the House GOP and DFL came to? Whichever one of you want to start.
You go ahead and start, and I'll mop up.
So start of the session this year, again, in Minnesota was an unusual one when you come in with how we did start of the session. The day we were down there, the Republicans showed up, the Democrats came 23 days later. There's a court case that came through trying to decide what was a quorum, what equal a quorum. 68, the court finally ruled over 68. That's a quorum. Trying to get some work done and some committee work done and just got delayed 23 days. Started the session after that. Agreement came together with who was going to be the speaker and who was going to be the speaker emeritus, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. But the agreement came, basically we were going to share roles, co-chairs on committees, which again, I have said before, and I said it when I ran my first term as balanced government is good. We have checks and balances. You don't just shove a lot of things through, either side. And I was okay with what was going to take place. 1 week they're leading the meeting and next week we're leading the meeting. And I think that was good. And, you could see it in the committees. We had divided government. We had checks and balances. Because I came out of the session before that where I didn't have any seat at the table. And, so it was nice to be able to finally put on even a outfit and play defense or whatever we had. So it worked out. It was an interesting session. I think for Minnesota, it was a history of a lot of unknowns because we all could make up what we thought should happen, but we finally got the answer to it. Let's see.
Thanks, Jim. It was really interesting. As he mentioned, we came in, gavelled in for 23 consecutive days to half-empty House. And then it was the ruling of the Attorney General that we did not have a quorum, so we parked that. And then when we did come back, we had a 1-vote majority for a number of weeks, 5 weeks, and that was because one of the reps that ran didn't live in his district. He had a little apartment that he didn't even hook up utilities to. So it was clear that he did not live in his district. He could not be sworn in. And so we had that 5-week time where we had the majority. And that's how Lisa Damath ended up to be Speaker of the House, was in an agreement during that time to get the House filled back up again. And I would agree also with Rep. Joy to your point that divided government is good. I said this at an event also last night that nobody got exactly what they wanted. Everything had to come through in a bipartisan fashion. Nothing cleared any committee, nothing cleared the House floor without full bipartisan or at least some degree of bipartisan buy-in, because if you were at a deadlock, if nobody broke from one side to the other, you were deadlocked. So I think we did some very good work in that environment. Now, a lot of the bills that came out of the House to be reconciled with the Senate, and I'm going to let these guys talk about that. They got all messed up in reconciliation with the Senate. I'm just troubled by, the work that was done there. Just kidding. So some of them actually came through honestly better. The Senate had done probably a little better work on some of these bills, and they came back to us for final vote a little better than we sent them. And some of them came back with some poison pills that I couldn't go with. But it's really fun. It's exciting. It's a privilege, an honor to be part of this whole process. I'm surrounded by really good people. I've had a lot of good visits from good people from about the district. So I'm again really thankful and honored to be part of this whole process.
Thank you. Well, you teed it up nicely. We're going to head over to our senators here and just talk about the beginning of their session a little bit. Not quite as chaotic, but there was still there's some challenges and opportunities, especially with the seat being open. Unfortunately, the passing of former Majority Leader Dietzich, they left a seat open that had to have a special election, which caused for a power sharing agreement for a short period of time in the Senate. So maybe just jumping over to our senators. Can you just talk about the beginning of session and then the impact it had on the Senate's ability to do some different things in the beginning of session and how it ultimately played out through the rest of session? Whichever you want to start first.
Sure.
Yeah, so, we, and I think, and Senator Johnson can put how he feels on it, but I think, we started with basically an idea we called it shared responsibility. And I think that, not saying that we have our differences, but I think that also set a tone for the session that I think was helpful and productive and saw a lot more co-presented bills even, which was something was kind of rare to see. But so a lot of times at the table, there were bills that were a Democrat and a Republican co-presenting a bill. So I was happy to be a part of a few of those and sat in committees and saw, some other people do that too. So it was, I think it set the tone, I think, for towards the end of obviously what was going to be, a difficult ending, having a tied house, that we did that. And I think the Senate did, I think, a fairly good job. I would say I probably have the same view that there were some things, came back from the House a little better. There were some things that came back from the House. Went, okay, that's the way it's going to be. But we all have to come to an agreement. But, overall, I mean, the big thing we had to do is we had to get a state budget done, which we did accomplish. The state budget got done on time, so there was no shutdown of state services, which would have looked very different from the last time there was a shutdown after a court ruling that said basically everything will shut down, everything. So I think that played in the back head. And I also, this year we still have a small surplus, but in the out years, there's the potential there for looking at a deficit. I think the Senate took the approach of maybe trying to take a little bit bigger bite out of that. And we did, address that in the out years. We had to do that. And we probably the next, go round of the fiscal go round anyway, we look at how we're gonna shape that up. I think, we think overall, we put the state in a pretty good shape.
Senator Johnson.
Yeah, so the beginning of session really did bring some optimism, I think, for Republicans in the Senate. For 2 years, we've really been taking a back seat, even though we were just one vote away from majority. We had the back seat in that. And so we came in after D6 unfortunate passing and had the opportunity to power share for quite some time then. I can't remember what the duration was exactly, how many weeks we were there power sharing during that time until the special election took place. And it really built some bridges across the aisle where you saw, like Senator Kupec say, you had co-gavels, you had co-presentations. I was actually co-leader of some sort at one for that time as well. And so we're very optimistic that we could run this together. You saw a lot more just relationships be built out and that process be smoother where bills from both sides that were, maybe in the extreme or you knew wouldn't pass if you had to have votes from one party and the other. So it was really a nice way of doing that. As soon as that special election was over, Democrats voted to take that bipartisan power sharing agreement and put that on the shelf. So it was unfortunate. So we went back to real partisanship and going forward that way. There were some long-term effects throughout the session. We had rule changes that were put into place that were going to stay there for the next year and a half. So those were some benefits to that too. Some relationships that were built that continued going forward. I think there were some with the tax share. We had a great relationship with Senator Rest on that as well. That was good. That was one of those issues where we saw that as an opportunity for the DFL during that power sharing time to really clean house. There's a member issue over there that they could have had an opportunity to take care of. Fortunately, the courts are doing that as we speak right now. as they're heading to that field. But we ended up towards the end of session in a place where the House Republicans and the House DFL really shared power as the representatives were talking about there. So really the first line of negotiations happened within the House between the DFL and the Republicans over there. Then you inserted the governor and the Senate majority leader, and they started renegotiating the bills at that point too. And so from my perspective, I was not excited with the direction that those bills were heading. You saw a lot of the cost shifts that the governor was fighting to put onto the counties, a lot of the issues with Medicaid, Medicare, those sorts of things, I don't think got resolved in a proper way. We really had to, and I got to give credit to the House Republicans on prioritizing things, prioritizing our counties to make sure that our taxpayers don't see huge rises in their property taxes, because they fought for prioritizing dollars to Minnesotans. We saw this program open up that gave free health care to undocumented workers with their undocumented people within the state, and the costs going off the Richter scale on that program. So when you combine that with the housing, with the education, and all the benefits that we're giving to that, and then they put it on the backs of our senior citizens and our counties and those sorts of folks that are here living, trying to work, eke out an existence in the state of Minnesota. I think we need to reprioritize. The House Republicans understood the task, and they went to task on that and tried to do that, and came out in a pretty productive way on that. But there are a number of things I felt were just so very short-sighted. There are some things, we're talking about data centers. One of the new big promising industries across the nation. Minnesota is unique in the place that it sits with the temperatures, with the resources that we have, that we could be a huge player in these data centers for the hyperscalers and even for the smaller ones as well too. And so it's unfortunate where you saw the DFL and the governor was a big part of this in stripping the tax credits that they had for that industry, inviting people in to be part of that. And they tried to do that. And so, I was not going to be part of that. I didn't sign off on those. We were able to renegotiate some things at the end with the bonding bill as a piece of leverage on that to say, okay, if we can't do the tax credit, is there a way we can do some depreciation on the assets that will kind of counteract that? We're able to not help incentivize it, but we were able to make it so that Minnesota is still a place that's competitive to get the data centers into this place. So you're going to see jobs, you're going to see ongoing tax revenue for our schools and for our counties if we can get these folks in here. There's small things like PGA really wanted to have an ongoing relationship with the state of Minnesota. The governor had promised the PGA that they would figure out a tax incentive way of doing that. And you think about bringing in the PGA, well, their tournaments and their play, when they come into town, they bring so many, 70% of the people that go to watch are from out state, filling up our hotels, our restaurants, being part of the community, riding Uber, doing those sorts of things, bringing in that money into a community. And all they were asking for was a slight discount on the tax for their tickets. I think it was $1.8 million. The governor and leadership in both the House and the Senate said, absolutely not. We're not going to be giving away money to millionaires that come into the state. But the reality is those jobs that it creates, the business opportunity it creates in this state is enormous. And so don't just, cut off your nose to spite your face on this. These are the issues that we continually run into in this state over and over again, that short-sightedness of we got to make sure that we're looking into the future, investing in the state in certain ways, whether it's wastewater, flood water mitigation, whether it's businesses. Otherwise, we are going to become the backwater to other states around us. And I know we're sitting in Moorhead and we hear that story over and over again. We're champions of this state. We want to see this state be a national leader, not only in business, but in education, in our infrastructure. And I think this session was another step backward away from that. And you saw it over and over again in the bills that were proposed. State government workers got over a $770 million increase in wages and benefits. And yet our nursing homes took a cut of about $260 million over the next 4 to 6 years. I mean, somebody come here and tell me how that's rational. we're trying to build up a community where people want to come and live and be part of. I think we're putting this right on the backs of people who at least can afford it and can deserve it. And so, I was very disappointed in this session. I don't mean to come off like like an angry politician, but I did feel like we took the wrong steps this year when we had so much opportunity to do the right things.
Well, there's a lot of discussion there, and we're going to touch on.
Does that say I talk too much?
No, you didn't. But we do have a limited amount of time, and so I want to cover a lot of different, a lot of different topics. And so obviously we touched on a number of different things, but maybe one of the things that is really something that's the chamber's worked on quite a bit is business mandates and reforms to those mandates. And so earned sick and safe time, paid family medical leave are things that we continue to talk about. And I want to chat a little bit more with you all about what happened this session. So maybe talk about some of the proposals that were out there, what happened this session, and then we'll dive into some more substantive topics. But maybe Senator Kupec, we want to start with you, kind of some of the bipartisan proposals that were introduced on earned sick and safe time, paid family medical leave, and ultimately where those went.
Sure. Yeah, on the earned sick and safe time, we made some very minor tweaks, I would say, on earned sick and safe time. There were some other ones that were in there that did have bipartisan support on the Senate side, but was not palatable to maybe some of our colleagues, DFL colleagues on the House side. And so those got taken out, but we did make a few minor changes in terms of the number of days before you have to, identify why you're going to be out and a few other things. There's also just kind of some more minor paperwork stuff on the side. We did make a few changes on that. On the paid family medical leave, at least on the Senate side, we didn't have anything. I know the chief author of that bill would like the kind of program to come up and running, which it'll start in January. And then I think once it's up and running, I think probably this spring, I would not be surprised if there's a few other tweaks that were brought up to be made on that. But those, for the most part, that's where we're on those two things.
Representative Joy, I know you had a bill to fully repeal paid family medical leave, and there was a number of different bills introduced by Representative Baker. Maybe just talk a little bit about what the House saw, and then ultimately, maybe for all of you, is just talk about, do you think that what was passed went far enough? And if not, then maybe what should we be doing in the next session? But first, Representative Joy.
Yeah, thank you. As a small business owner, the ESST time, of course, it came in and we've adapted to that. We've all kind of worked our businesses on how we're going to do that. It's there today. I myself did not bring any changes to that bill, to the ESST time, because we're working with it today. The biggest concern was paid family leave. When you talk about paid family leave and everything we heard, and we sit in on taxes about, and Isha Gomez saying that we want to make sure it don't impact people's household budgets. I think people still understand today, even though they moved the percentages from 1.2 to 1.1 is what can come out of the paychecks now, split equally between the employer and employee. So if you're on a salary, it's going to affect your paycheck coming home because it's going to reduce you come January 1st. I've talked to a lot of the cities and stuff about collective bargaining with unions right now. They're negotiating with their law enforcement about what it's going to look like next year for the budgets. And if you negotiate with the law enforcement, you say 2.75 is going to be their increase, and then you come back and take 0.55 of their paycheck, you're going to have issues with the unions going on. Those are concerns. Mine was a repeal, and people have said, well, don't you want to be able to take care of employees and stuff like that? I've been a small employer. I've been in this industry for a long time. And one of the things we have learned is if we, back in the day when we paid $4.35 an hour and we weren't getting employees, we learned to incentivize or raise their wages or do more as a private employer. That's why we invest in businesses. We don't need the state of Minnesota coming in and telling us what to do. A couple of things with paid family leave is we created a new program when today, even if we would came out with a bill that said every employer must offer long-term and short-term disability, I, as an employer, could have went out there and bought Aflac for my employees and paid for that. Instead of having the state of Minnesota have 400 new employees to create one program. That's what we're going to do, 400 employees. And I can tell you right now, there's going to be modifications to paid family leave when it comes out because it's not going to be able to stand. It's going to have to be raised. That number's going to be raised. I hope we have a seat at the table when we don't allow that. So repealing that, or even there was in the House, there was an option to push it out a year, just so we can study it a little more because this is coming in January. I think some people that are employees are gonna see their paychecks change in January. And they're gonna be like, why did it change? Well, you're participating in a program. I don't want to. There's not an option. There's no options. It's just, here's what the program is. 400 new employees in the state of Minnesota, they're going in a deficit. We could have pushed it all year, just can't see, but it's not. So I think, we definitely have to be looking at this, and I'm concerned. And, when they come to the table for more money, I think we just gotta let things go broke, and maybe it'll take care of itself. So, thank you.
And then maybe just going over to the other ones that haven't necessarily talked about it. Do you think these reforms went far enough? If not, what are some of the things that we can maybe expect to be introduced next session?
Thank you, Kel. So these reforms were nowhere near far enough. We do need a full repeal. Anytime we start to talk this way, I know there's a danger that we could sound kind of mean-spirited or anti-worker, anti-employee. You know, if you think long-term, as we've talked about here, you need to look beyond this moment. It's not sustainable. It's not affordable. They come in with a lower rate. Every state that's tried to do this before, that rate has had to go up and up and up and over 2% each for employer and employee. And now all of a sudden it's way out of hand. It's a new tax that's being levied, and it's the problem with it too is on the utilization side. Some people will never use it because they have such an incredible work ethic. They're healthy. They're not having to be gone that much. And some will abuse it to the max. So you've just created a big old loophole where that, you know, now you're in the workplace and I'm using it all and you're not using it at all. The frustration that starts to mount and the discord inside that workplace is awful. And then the other thing is that we haven't even talked about up here today is the real cost is where do we find the employees to replace the ones who are not there? We're hiring more people to plug the hole for these dear souls that are taking full advantage of these days off. And that's the real hidden cost to employers. And so now we're going to chase employers out of our state once again with that uneven playing field, back to the border city issue. This is a loser and it's got to be stopped. I wish it could happen. If we could, you know, give away $100,000 to everyone who walked by, I'd sure be in favor of that. But it wouldn't last long because we'd be out of money. Right. So this is another one of those examples. It sounds great if we could do it, but we just can't.
Senator Johnson, then we'll go end with Senator Kupec.
I think I said that last time. These guys hit it.
Do you think that these reforms went far enough? And you can add some more comments to that.
Sure, and on the limit, on earn sick and save time, you know, no, because I had a couple of other reforms that they got taken out, so I would have obviously, I wanted those in there, it would have been nice. I will say on the rates in other states have not gone through the roof, and so that is just not the way it's played out in other states. And other states that have looked at, you know, like an Aflac type thing, it does not come close to that. And there is, well, yes, there is a cost. We do not talk about the benefits that this will bring, though. We are short on childcare, and we all know that the newborns are the most expensive ones to take care of in a childcare situation. And if a parent can stay home a little bit longer and have that option, that's going to be good for childcare. That's also going to be good for the health of that baby. And all the studies show that paid family medical leave and all the places that have done it, the results, there is some savings in terms of less hospitalizations, illness for those newborns. So there is some savings to be picked up there. The other, and the cap got lowered to 1.1. But right now at the actuary study, it is less than that. And that is the cap of 1.1. I would say if for some reason we come up on the cap, then yeah, we ought to look at maybe how the benefits are doled out, and maybe it becomes a slightly less generous program to make sure we stay under that cap. I think the cap is an important part. I was one of the people that, advocated for put that cap in the first place. So I'm glad that it's there. So I think that's the route we need to take. But there are a lot of other benefits that don't get overlooked. And when you talk to a lot of workers, there's a lot of workers who would like this benefit. And it is, the way it is set up and designed, it's not going to be one of those things where, and this is sometimes some of the problems with earn sick and save time, it's like, hey, the weather's good on Friday, I'm taking the day off, I use paid for the medical leave. You can't. This is for long-term disability, and then you have to have the doctor Or it has to be a case where if you're going to take care of an elderly parent, we're all doing that. And the other thing I will say is that in my career, I have far too often seen, and it's always female coworkers, they have to make the choice in their life of whether they go on with their career or they become the caretaker. And if this enables them to also maintain their job and come back, that keeps females and mothers who usually end up doing the child rearing, that keeps them in the workforce, and that's a benefit.
Alrighty, well, we're gonna move on to some other topics and just being cognizant of the time. We have a short amount of time, so just would ask for answers to be concise as we jump through, because I want to make sure there's a lot of different priorities that were discussed this session. First, just want to talk about taxes here real quick. Representative Joy, just maybe, as the vice chair of the House, or the co-vice chair of the House Tax Committee, there's a number of different things that were introduced. There was adjustment of the statewide sales tax, reductions in local government aid and county program aid, expansion of R&D tax credit, maybe a social media tax, a lot of different things. So maybe just talk about some of those proposals overall, and then just some of the highlights of what actually passed in that final tax bill.
So I'll give it a quick wrap on that, Caleb, because of time. One of the things in the tax bill, I was, after the session had ended, we had to go in a tax working session trying to decide it. And one of the things that was proposed is 385 million to county aids and LGA, local government aids, to the cities and the counties. Already sent enough mandates to them. The property taxes in 26, when everybody got their statements, I think are surprised of how much they're going up. And everybody's gonna have the county's office planning bill. But until 27, it's going to be worse because there's a lot of mandates that's going to hit. And so that was one of the things, is making sure there was no cuts to county aids or local governments. That was a concern for me. They wanted to create a 5th-tier tax bracket. Minnesota is already highly taxed compared to our bordering states. And this is something we got to start looking at, and we have a spending problem. Now, on the tax committee, we did pass a cannabis tax, raising the taxes on cannabis. And you know what? I was okay with that. It's what I always say in my community store. When people come in and they want to buy a bottle of water or they want to buy a bottle of pop, water's not taxed, pop is. That's a choice. So with cannabis, it's choice. Again, that's where it is. So, that's one of the things I'm okay. I voted with the tax bill. But the overall bill, and then you're going to try to tax, there was a bill introduced on taxing social media in Minnesota. Now, for myself, I have a office over in North Dakota that I spend a big part of my day in, and then I have some businesses in Minnesota side. And I was really curious in how we were going to chase this needle, wondering if my phone was using Facebook in North Dakota, or if I was going to use Facebook in Minnesota. And they were going to tax the companies on this. This is how over reality we were. We knew this shouldn't even been introduced, because how are you going to regulate? So, be in South Dakota, wherever you're at. But the tax bill did go through. There was a lot of discussion. There's a total difference between Senator Rest and I've talked to Senator Rest and to Isha Gomez in the House. Two different people looking at things. I mean, you know what? Like I said, my biggest win out of the tax bill, we got some R&D credits. The sustainable aviation field didn't go through, but we got some R&D credits to keep people over here. And my biggest win, I feel, is not having any cuts to local government aid and county aid, because that's something with all the mandates that got pushed on them. They're still going to be short, but we did cut that. So thank you.
Continuing on the tax bill, and Representative Joy talked about it a little bit there. And to Senator Kupec, maybe talk a little bit more about that sustainable aviation fuel tax credit. Obviously, a huge opportunity for Clay County. So maybe talk a little bit more about that. I know there was maybe some few minor things, but nothing substantial for sustainable aviation fuel. So maybe just give us a little bit more insight on that.
The good thing was we were able to keep in place what we have. The bad thing is that we would have liked to have expanded it. So Minnesota's been a leader in sustainable aviation fuel, and with the tax credit, and other states have looked around and they've kind of matched our tax credit. So what we really wanted to do was extend that tax credit out and also allow it to be applied to some new technology that's come online. Why that did not go through is mind-boggling to me. Why people were, I know I have some suspicions why they were against it, but it really, we've been a leader in this, and this was a way I think we could have done that. Luckily, I think, we've kept enough in place. When I talked to the people from DG Fuels, we're still on track, which is a really good thing. So I think, we did the least we could do to keep us on track, but it is something I think we'll come back, and we'll look at a little bit more. The other thing, that was very frustrating was the border cities tax credit, which when we had the hearing for that in the Senate, and Ann Rest, the tax chair, thought she was all aglow. It was like the best thing she had heard. She said, these are really common sense, adjustments. It's something that hasn't really been opened up and looked at in quite a while. And it was just, it was adjusting it towards the new economy that we have. There are service industries that are excluded for that. East Grand Forks has a major movie theater, thing that would really help them out do that. And that's an important part of your downtown economy. And there were things for Moorhead too that would have been really good. And so that one was very frustrating too, that one didn't get over.
You're just following my script perfectly. So, and they didn't have the questions beforehand, but maybe just opening it up to anybody on that border cities legislation and overall border competitiveness, the tax environments, just any further things to add.
So I know we had a bill that was drafted that was going to be some improvements to the border cities legislation. We had it pulled together. We had, I know, 3 authors in the House, and that one kind of fizzled. And I'm absolutely committed to whatever that looks like, join this group and push it over the finish line. We got to get it onto the tax committee, and we have to deal, I think, with enough integrity to say the deal that's struck that we can all work with and we can all agree to, we're going to carry that straight in and represent that. Even if some new idea flashes in our head, hey, I think I can make it a little better. No, we spent a lot of time crafting it the way it is. Sure enough, we'll talk about it in committee. There'll be amendments, there'll be this, there'll be that. But to the point where you bring it as a group, if there's a crack in your group, it's going to show to that committee and it's not going to have the full strength that it needs. So that's going to be a really important thing for the border cities, is do the front end work, make sure everybody's on board, and then actually bring it the way that it was agreed to the committee and on to the House and on to the Senate.
Hey, I'll jump on that real quick too. We had the border city legislation scheduled for the tax committee on a Thursday. And I know there was McKeeler and myself, and we've all worked on that bill and signed on to that bill. But there's some language in there Keeler would like to see change. And so that got pulled from the tax committee on that Thursday, and that's what we're doing. So hopefully through the summer or something like that, we can work on what language needs to be modified in there, and we can get something done right now here. So hopefully that's something.
Thank you. Jumping to another topic here, bonding and infrastructure, obviously substantial for the state of Minnesota. And I know we have an audience question here on bonding as well, so I'll get to that. But maybe starting with you, Senator Johnson, just talk about the overall scope and scale of this year's bonding bill, talk about some of the negotiations, and then I'm going to chime in with this audience question. Inflation, it continues to eat up some of these projects and make the cost bigger and bigger. Do you expect a bonding bill in 2026? So a lot there, I know, but maybe just kind of your perspective.
Yeah, so the bonding bill, has always become a political football. And so we got in towards the end of session this year, and we saw a number of issues and needs across the state that were in there. We didn't have the capacity to have a huge bonding bill, even though we have a huge backlog of projects across the state. And so what we have determined to do this year was, well, let's kick that over to agencies that control a lot of the budget spending, a lot of that bonding spending. Whether it's our university systems, DNR, MnDOT has a lot of say on what's going on for projects, that sort of thing. So what we did, instead of doing member asks or the earmarks, which a typical bill would have in it, we threw that all at the agencies. I think it roughly ended up to be somewhere around $800 million authorized borrowing bill. And so now you're going to see some of those projects going through whatever agencies that have been requesting these dollars over the past few years and really have identified and prioritized the projects across the state. I think going into next year, I think our capacity is going to be closer to $1 billion now that we've got that 800 million out the door. And so there, I don't know what it's going to ultimately look like. I assume that we're going to have a bill. I mean, it's been kind of the MO that we entertain one at least every year. And so in that, I think we're going to see more district needs within those bills based on legislative input. Now, this is a pure guess, and I'm sure the bonding chairs have a different idea of what that's going to look like. But we've got a number of projects here, whether it's a level 4 project here for our school districts, whether it's the flood mitigation issues, drinking water. We've got that great project going from north to south that affects some of our communities around here as well too. It's going to be big. So I'm hoping that we can have more of a personal imprint based on our districts on next year's bonding bill, but that's yet to be determined.
Great. Well, I know for our region, flood mitigation is a huge priority, 60.4 million across the entire, Clay County region, including city projects, county projects, other entity projects. So a lot of things there. Maybe Senator Kupec, I want to point to you because I know that's been kind of a big priority. Can you talk about the flood mitigation projects in our region, and the importance of this to our region?
Sure. So yeah, with the diversion going on, legally, the diversion cannot run until some of these flood projects on the Minnesota side are buttoned up. So Moorhead, obviously, we have some lift stations and a couple of other things that need to be done to finish that up. And then when you move out into the county, there's ring dikes and other things around some of the other communities that need also to be done. And that's how we end up at that. It's close to 62. And yes, with inflation going on, the sooner you do the projects, the less they will cost. Even the Moorhead portion of that has steadily increased over the bonding bills that we've introduced the last few years. So yeah, but hopefully even with the way the money is allocated, that we'll get at least a little bite out of the flood mitigation money that's coming.
Right, and that was total of 9 million for across the entire state.
Right, but I think the case we have here is very strong. Obviously, I think also down towards Mankato, they have a pretty strong case too. And with that little amount, it might just be that, those are the couple that get it, so.
Jumping to a couple topics, especially, business audience, workforce continues to be a perennial challenge for a lot of businesses throughout our community, but frankly, across the entire nation. So maybe talk about some of the things that this session, did to address workforce and overall kind of what's the state of Minnesota's role in addressing workforce. And in that, there'll be some kind of follow-up questions on housing and childcare, because we think that those are pivotal to addressing the workforce challenge as well. So maybe Representative Gander, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Cale. Absolutely. When we think of workforce and what is the role then of government, state government, to try to improve the environment for workforce, the two items that I doodled before you said it were childcare and housing. I wrapped up 2 terms as mayor in East Grand Forks, and we convened to try to grow the childcare capacity in that community. We'd identified a 200 place shortfall in childcare in East Grand Forks alone prior to our doing that. And I think we were able to open up capacity for about 100. We partnered with different groups and agencies to get that done. Well, the state is looking at those very same kinds of things. What can we do to improve childcare access? One of the things we're going to have to do, as I was door knocking a year ago, is we did really ramp up regulation on home daycare centers in the last several years. We're going to have to try to roll back some of that. We don't want to make it unsafe for kids, but if you overregulate these small businesses, they just don't stay in operation. Between the frustration and the cost of doing business, it's not tenable for them. Onto housing, that's going to be a forever issue. The only solution I can think of is, and nobody wants to hear it, somehow the cost of that home for a young family is going to have to be brought down a tad. So how do we do that? Maybe it is some down payment assistance that's administered locally, county-wide. I mean, I don't know exactly, but with construction costs, materials and labor being what they are, in housing, and it's nobody's fault. I'm not pointing at contractors, because they also have employees with all benefits that they need to receive, and bring sick and save time and pay family medical leave and all that. And so here, it all kind of rolls back around. So housing, if it's going to be $250 or $300 a square foot to build a house, you do the math on 1,000 square foot house, that's your starter home right now in the world that we are. And so that is a very difficult issue. We're going to have to deal with it and somehow figure out how do we help these folks get in and not have another housing bubble like we had burst in 2008, where we're giving all these, really bad loans to people who aren't able to repay them. So we're gonna have to work around that one as well. So coming back in, the only way I see of helping out with workforce housing is to try to maybe we can help with infrastructure on a development, whatever that might look like, that the ultimate bottom line cost to the final homeowner is going to be less. And we're going to have to build out some more childcare capacity. And I'm also a big free market person that says, if you take away some regulation from business, it's going to find a way to expand and grow and create the good jobs and pay good wages. So there's got to be that in there too. Did I go too long?
No, you're just fine. Maybe just diving a little bit more onto housing. I know there was an initiative, and you feel free to touch on it, on workforce overall, but there was an initiative to kind of standardize zoning across the entire state of Minnesota. And Representative Joy, I want to just, as a former mayor of Hawley, can you just talk about, some of the implications of that standardization? I think that bipartisan working group is trying to overall lower the cost of housing. Maybe talk from your perspective, having that both now local hat and state hat, what that means for a community like Hawley.
One of the concerns is there is a lot of housing bills coming forward to put in aesthetic mandates and put in size mandates. And again, not letting local have their control. I believe in total local control. One of the things I've been thinking about through the summer here is, a lot of these people trying to get a house, it's not necessarily how much the house is going to cost, but it's having the money to have the down payment. When you look at the down payment, so, I was visualizing the other day, I don't know how it's going to work, just to visualize it, is, when you build a house, you have taxes on the house and the materials and the construction, everything. What if the state decided to give back those taxes and the down payment assistance to people building these houses? Just to help them a little bit, because the state's not going to get the house unless they're allowed to get some help to build this house built. So, maybe a tax incentive that puts that back, and the banker knows that taxes on all that material in that house is going to come back from the state to a down payment assistance. Something like that, but coming to the counties and coming to the cities and telling them that the state of Minnesota says a one size fits all for all of Minnesota does not work. I mean, and I know we have housing markets through the roof. It's what it is. But we're starting to see that cool off. Like for Hawley, for my sake, we used to have, if 10 days the house was on the market, that was a long time. Now houses are lasting a little longer in the market because I think that starting to hit that bubble. But we definitely have to do something there, put regulations. But I just think we have to keep legislation in the state of Minnesota out of telling people how their zoning needs to go and what sizes and what they need to build in the cities. And there's some grants that came out that they can make their own adjustments, which again, I think I'm okay with that, because if there's grants available and the city wants to take that initiative to change the zoning, great, but not come in and force them on it.
Any other comments on workforce, child, housing, anything like that? Well, maybe we'll just keep kind of diving through the list here, and just recognizing time. It's going to hit on a few more things. Healthcare. It seemed like healthcare was a major topic of discussion. Obviously, with the beginning with some cost shifts proposed for counties. I know, for instance, in the one of the budgets, we were able to get that funding for the psychiatric treatment facility. And so maybe going over to Senator Kupec and Representative Gander, both sit on the Health and Human Services, or the Human Services and Health and Human Service. Talk a little bit more about that bill, maybe what some of the cost shifts that were in there, and then talk about that funding for the PRTF facility here in Clay County.
Sure, and on the Senate side, a lot of that is actually probably more on the Human Services bill, and it's always where our jurisdiction lies sometimes. We're not even sure on the own committee where it's at, who has what. Yeah, on the Health and Human Services side, I think, I think we did, we got some more money, kept money going for childcare, which goes back to the last question on that. And, we also provided some more, some direct payments to hospitals, because our rural hospitals they're not, they're breaking even at best. That's it. And so they needed some money there. We also got some money for rural ambulances, which I think is also important. Would have liked to have more money so that everybody got some of it. But certainly those critical access ones, those volunteer ambulance corps, they're having a hard time surviving. So I think we did that. On the Human Services side, the governor came in with a lot of cuts, cuts that I was not happy about and comfortable with. And I think those, pushing back a lot down onto the counties, is, sure, that may help balance the state budget, but in the end, these services are still gonna be needed, and somebody's gonna end up paying for them. So that's probably not the way to go. And his on the, in terms of putting a cap on long-term care facilities or nursing homes. I understand the reasoning behind it, and it is, one of the fastest growing areas of the state budget, because we're aging, we're getting old, more people are using that service. And if you want to try to bring in the cost a little bit, that's where you have to go. I don't necessarily know that, in my mind, that I would go on, and I certainly didn't want to go as heavy as the governor went in doing that. And I'm glad that we were able to balance that out a little bit. And also, honestly, too, there was a lot of cuts to disability services. That would have been terrible, maybe, life-threatening on the disability services side. And we were able, able to balance that out a little bit more. So make some cuts, put some caps in on places where there's growing parts of our budget, but in a better way. Is it perfect? No.
Representative Gander, any to add?
Thanks, Gil. I remember about 10 years ago, visiting with a county commissioner who lamented how their social services budget at the county was growing, and it was absolutely out of their control. It was all state mandate. It was driven by demographics. And as that happened, I can't pay the sheriff and hire, and over here, I can't fix a road or a bridge. So counties' budgets were getting squeezed by unchecked growth in some of that social spending. And I do not want to sound vindictive or mean-spirited one bit, because I loved Representative Knorr, a Democrat, and Joe Schumacher felt exactly the same. Our two co-chairs in Human Services, the same. We're going to protect the most vulnerable people, older people, folks with disabilities, and children. We're going to absolutely put them on a kind of a pedestal and say, these are the ones we're going to take the best care of. Now, what do we do to try to constrain costs? Because, on the state level, human services, social spending is about to pass K-12 education as our #1 budget item, right? And this is not where we need to go. We need to educate our kids also. So the savings will have to be found in that subset, if we can, of folks who could go to work, right? We have to find and qualify those folks who are able-bodied and sound mind, and somehow find the way to nudge them. Going back to Bill Clinton, we're going to end welfare as we know it. There will be a work requirement to welfare. We kind of threw that out the window with a lot of wink, wink. We're not going to really push it too hard. It's still there, and that can be brought back. And I believe that's where we can find some savings that will help to guide this whole thing forward. Thank you.
Well, as we're approaching time here, I just have a few rapid response questions that I want, just a couple word answer, or, just a 1-word answer, a couple word answer. So maybe first, let's start off with, let's grade this session, A through F. What did you think of this session? We're going to start with Senator Johnson.
It was a D.
Representative Gander,
B-.
Senator Kupec,
Yeah, I like the B-.
Representative Joy.
C.
In one sentence, what was what piece of legislation which, let's see, hold on. What piece of legislation are you most proud of that it was accomplished this session? Start on the other side, work our way back.
And I accomplished.
That was accomplished.
Well, I'd say the most is not cutting any, not legislation, but just not cutting LGA and county.
Kupec,
Yeah, we balance the budget and the state is functioning.
Representative Gander.
The bar level.
I really like the ag bill. We had some hard pull on the ag bill to move it more to urban, away from traditional farming. And I'm all for urban whatnot. But the ag bill came through as a rock solid bit of legislation for our family farmers. I was proud of that.
I think my most proud moment was probably the power sharing agreement that we had early on in the session. It was actually a pretty productive piece.
Looking at the future, so everybody get out your crystal balls for these next couple. Will there be another special will there be another special session? Yes or no?
No.
Gander,
I'd say no.
Senator Kupec,
At the end of session, no. Whether we have one before, I think we're still trying to figure out exactly what the federal budget implications are, possibly.
I'd say no, and hopefully not, because it takes 68 to make quorum, 67 in the House, so you need one more.
All right, kind of final question for all of you, and we'll start with Representative Joy and work our way back. How can business and community leaders work with you between now and the next session to address some of the largest challenges facing our community in greater Minnesota?
I think just get an old me, sit it down and talk about, like the paid family leave. I'll mention it again. And one of the things when you think about paid family leave, it's businesses, we always say, well, you can hire somebody for 20 weeks to fill that gap because it's going to give somebody a break, right? So when I look back, I see a paramedic, I see a law enforcement in the back, and those guys can't just grab somebody up the street to fill those positions. If you have 3 paramedics out on leave, now we got to have ambulances sit on the sideline. That's the concerns on people that leave. Childcare. You have childcare going on, and all of a sudden they lose 3 helpers that work at the childcare facility. They might be closed because they can't take all those kids. That's one of the things I hope we can really look at. But that's just a concern for me coming down the pipe.
Senator Kupec?
Yeah, I would say, just reach out. Certainly, I think all of us up here have a pretty good open door policy. Always happy to, respond to those meetings and tell you, and don't wait till we're in session. I have plenty of time right now. I'd love to grab a cup of coffee with you right now or through the fall. When session hits, it gets a little bit tough.
Representative Gander.
Thank you. So I agree with all of this. I'd say get organized and find folks who have a like mind as yours and bring the numbers. It can be emails and probably that's the best. I remember being on the city council and someone saying I've had a number of calls about the stop sign which usually meant they had 1 or 2 calls, but that was enough to motivate them to come to the meeting and say we should do something about this. So I got about 100 emails from teachers that we need to do better for retirement for teachers. And I read through, most all of them, because most of them were a format that came all the same. That number was compelling for me. And I mean, early on, I met with teachers in my district. Sorry, this is a long answer. But my thought is organize, get the numbers together and come in. If you can come in with a slightly different email, we see the same heading in the same body. So if you can even just tweak the heading by 1 word and the body by 5 words and hey, how's your dog doing? But that's where the power is. Bring the numbers, get organized to people who feel as you do, and then bring the numbers. Thanks.
Yeah, and so I think one of the big benefits from this community and Fargo Chamber, and you got to thank Shannon and Kale and Catherine and those folks who are doing it. But when you get on the bus and come on down during the session time, Paul, you've been there, what it's like. I mean, you have that whole group that comes down, introduce themselves, not necessarily to us. We know you guys real well. But you go and you do the walk around and you meet different senators and representatives and the governor. That has an impact down there and it really echoes. Well, what's going on with the Moorhead area? What's happening up there? And you get to tell your story. That has such an impact. So I really encourage you, jump on the bus, go down there. If you're a member, that'd be fantastic. You guys do a great job.
Great. Well, that's a great plug. I love that for our Moorhead Area Data Capital. Just before I welcome Shannon to wrap us up here, and I know we're over time, but just want to first recognize the elected officials that are in the audience. So thank you all for your service to our community, and then also want to thank our elected officials up here that were able to make it. I know Representative Keeler let me know that she wasn't going to be able to make it, but we just really appreciate you all being up here.